Okay, so let's talk about behavior now. So we talked about executive functioning. We talked about the fact that we don't need to necessarily decide if it's behavior or if it's a lack of a skill. Either way, we're still going to work to solve the problem, right? Because our job is to have students be successful in our class and solve those problems. Um, Again, those problems also involve us, right? They involve our behavior as humans and and the students' teachers, not just the students. We have to work together in partnership. So that's sort of where we're going to go now. So we need to consider what's our role and what's the student's role and how can we partner together to make success. Um, so the question is, are we reinforcing the behavior? So again, is it a skill? Is it a choice? Is it behavior? I don't care. I'm going to call it a behavior. So the problem is a behavior. So something that's happening. Um, the only exclusion to this is if it is really a very clear skill deficit and the student does not have the ability to do the skill, right? And that's been clear. The student can't do it. That's the only exception to what I'm going to talk about. So we can still teach it though, and so consider that in our discussion. So um, it's important to understand if we're reinforcing the behavior, because many times I observe teachers and they're completely reinforcing the behavior. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're just giving the kid exactly what they need. I mean, not what they need, what they want, by how they react to the student's behavior. So, many of you talked about behavior and how do I shape this and how do I support students in my classroom based on behavior. So that's why we're diving into this in our UDL conversation. So, many times I see the solution to a behavior, an unwanted behavior, punishment. Most of the time, that's not going to work. It's not going to change the behavior. Um, Actually, frequently will increase the behavior. So, we're going to assume this is not an executive functioning need. This is actually a behavior, right? This is a choice. So, we have 4 functions of behavior. It's very important to understand what are the functions of behavior so we can identify how to solve the problem and not reinforce it. So let's talk about those 4 functions of behavior. So the first one is sensory. All right. So I may do something because it feels good. That's sensory. So I may hit my head on the desk because it feels good. I may hit the student next to me because it feels good. I may bite my nails because it feels good, right? So those are all sensory things. Those are going to happen pretty unconsciously many of the times because our bodies are always sensory seeking in some ways. Some of us just have a better ability to regulate those needs on a daily basis or moment by moment. Right? So sensory is more, we'll find that's a function of behavior for more impaired kids. So students on the spectrum, students with sometimes with ADHD, depending if they're maybe have some sensory issues as well. But primarily our students on the spectrum are where we're going to find the sensory seeking behaviors being the function is sensory. So again, but we may see the student bouncing, right? They need that sensory input, right? So a student who may do really good on yoga ball, a student who may go to the squishy seat or TheraBands or something like that. That's sensory, right? They need that sensory input. Escape is the next function of behavior. So I may not initiate the task. I may crumble up my paper. I may forget my pencil, right? Because I want to escape the behavior. I'm going to escape the demand, right? My goal of my behavior is to escape, to not do what's going to be expected of me, right? So I'm going to do anything I can to not complete the demand. So this is typical, sorry, most typical of most of our students is escape, right? That's what we're going to see in our classroom. Most, I'd say, it's definitely one of the top 2. Again, escape can look different, so I may be disruptive, right? Because I don't want to have the attention be on me because I want to escape the fact that if I am disruptive, we won't be able to move to the next thing, right? So All right, we'll keep going. So again, let's give one more. So if I yell out in class, or I use profanity, or I hit someone, right? I'm probably going to get thrown out of class. That's a perfect escape mechanism. I can go sit in the office. By the time someone's going to see me, the class is going to be over. I've escaped the demand. I don't need to do it, right? Most of the time, that's exactly what happens. So most of the time, teachers kick students out of their room. It's exactly the behavior the student wants. You're just reinforcing that behavior. The next top 2 functions of behavior for most of our typical students is attention, right? So I'm going to be the class jokester. I'm going to hit the student. I'm going to throw this. I'm going to walk around. Whatever behavior I'm going to do, I'm doing it because I'm seeking attention. I don't care if it's positive. I don't care if it's negative. I just want attention. That is what I want. So we'll go back to dog training. Here's my perfect example. So my dog Ollie, when we got him as a puppy, we trained him to ring the doorbell. Not the physical doorbell. We have like bells that hang on our front door. So when he has to go to the bathroom, he hits with his paw the doorbell. It's worked flawlessly, right? He doesn't have access to the house. If he ever needs to go out and we're not paying attention to him, he rings the doorbell. We let him out. He's also smart though. So when he's bored or he's overtired, he rings the doorbell because he wants to go out. Of course, he has just been out for 2 hours. I know that he doesn't have to pay. He's just simply doing it because he wants attention. He knows if I get up, I'm not focused on him, right? I'm not paying attention to him. He's whatever his reason is, his function of that behavior is to seek attention. He knows he rings, I get up. He's using that to his advantage. Same thing students do, right? They are going to do something that's disruptive or not appropriate to get your attention. Hopefully, we want the student's behavior to be a positive, that they'd get your attention because they're doing something good. But frequently, that's not why we're paying attention to their behavior. It's usually because it's an inappropriate behavior to seek attention. Again, it could be attention from peer or from adult. It doesn't matter. The next one, again, isn't frequently with more of our typical students, more of our more impaired students, but it's still an important one, is access to a tangible. So they want the iPad, for example. So that's a very frequent one with more of our impaired students, is they want the iPad, and so they'll have behaviors to get the iPad. They'll kick, they'll hit, they'll scream, they'll tantrum, whatever it is, because they want access to this tangible. It may also happen even in terms of like a food item, right? I want a different food item, so I'm going to act a certain way because I want access to it. And I know if I do this behavior, I'll eventually get access. So go back to another dog example. So my dog Ollie, he puts these bones on my lap when he wants me to get the marrow out of the middle of the bone for him. They're cooked. Don't worry. It's not gross. It's not raw. So he'll keep putting the bone, right, on my lap and paw me until I give him the marrow. If I give him the marrow, though, I reinforce the behavior, right? So I have to be careful. But he's trying to get access to what's in that bone, so he's going to do whatever behavior he can to gain access, all right, to that tangible. So it may also be, the student may not want to come in from recess, right? So they've run away because they escape. They want to stay in that preferred area. They may flee or escape to the gym because their preferred area is gym. So they're going to want access to that tangible or that space, right? It may also be a person or a peer. So I may do something, right? So here's one. So I may get in trouble because I actually really enjoy spending time with the principal. The principal helps me with their work. The principal is really kind to me. I actually don't get in trouble. They just talk to me. Or I go to my guidance counselor. I like being my guidance counselor. Being my guidance counselor is better than being in class, right? So that's escaping to that tangible. I want this person. Sometimes escape and those things go hand in hand a little bit, but generally they're pretty clear. All right, so we need to make sure we understand what is the behavior, right? So what is our target behavior? We need to establish a target behavior. Until we do that, we can't understand what is the function of the behavior. So what's the target behavior and why is it happening? as a teacher, you can take pretty basic data on that. So we call it ABC data. So the antecedent, what happened before? So it's usually a demand. What was the behavior? What happened? And then what was the consequence? So ABC data. We can take ABC data. What happened? So for example, I gave Sam a worksheet. She crumbled it up and said, F this. What happened? I threw her out of class, so she swore at me. So now she leaves the room. If I look at that pattern over time, is that the same pattern? Am I looking at the same types of behaviors? It's probably escape, right? So I'm escaping the demand. I don't want to do the worksheet, so I'm going to do something that's going to allow me to escape that situation, right? So if we take ABC data, we can look at what those trends are. So if this is a student that isn't just your nudgy student, whatever, has gone through SRBI, is probably in tier 3, or is a special education student, 504 student, and these are really big problems. We're seeing it interrupting the learning environment to a marked degree. Our BCBA should really be doing an evaluation to look at what is that function of the behavior. So they'll do a functional behavioral assessment, an FBA. They will go into classes, multiple environments, take data, and then from that data, they will decide what's the target behavior, what's the function of the behavior, and then how are we going to solve that problem. And that would be through a behavior intervention plan. That would be a formal written plan. Again, there's lower level students that we can be doing this in our own classrooms to see how we can shape these behaviors. Another thing that I failed to mention was, is this behavior only happening in my class? Is this the only environment? So I also want to talk to other teachers the student may have to look at, is it just with me, or is this more of a global problem we all need to work on? Is there something in my environment or something that I'm doing that is now not allowing the student to be successful? So if we are reflective and look at changing our behavior. So I may say, Susie's not getting started, right? And I come over and I say, what can I help you with? Why are you not getting started? Well, I asked her what she needed, right? But your tone and your body language was not helpful. So we have to think about how we, as educators, are interacting with our students as well. So in this whole process of identifying the target behavior and looking at, are we reinforcing the behavior based on the function of the behavior, I would suggest have a peer come watch, right? Do a paraprofessional in your class. Have them keep an eye on that student and give feedback. You have to be open to that feedback, though. What am I doing? Because many times I find it's a combination of the student and the teacher together is not working, and so we both need to adjust our behavior. Have your administrator come in. If it's, not happening in history class, but it's happening in your science class, have that history teacher possibly pop in. Maybe go watch a student science class. Whatever it may be, have the school psychologist come down. Whatever it may be, you have to be open to that feedback and open to what is going on in my classroom and how can I be part of the problem or be part of the solution. So if I am reinforcing a behavior, right? So I am throwing the student out of class. That's exactly what they want. How do I look and try to shape that behavior? So, every single time, actually, let's go back to the student who doesn't initiate and is shouting out. Let's just even say those are the two behaviors, right? So those are happening in my class. What I need to think about is how can I shape those? So instead of saying, Sam, can you please be quiet every single time? Or, right? The best way to shape that behavior is not to continue to reinforce it, because most likely it's escape or attention by those two behaviors. I want to actually work to extinguish the behavior by giving so much positive reinforcement they're getting the attention, and also there isn't going to be the escape because I'm working to support and hold accountable. They're not going to feel like they need to get out. So every single thing that student is doing. So the student takes out the piece of paper. The student takes a paper from me. Thank you so much for taking that. I'm so excited that we're going to get started today. I'll be over in 2 seconds. Let's work together. Oh, anything you can. So, and also reinforcing other students around. So let's say the person next to Sam raises their hand. I really loved how you raised your hand, Sam. Do you have something to say? I bet you could raise your hand too, right? So we always want to continue to try to model that behavior and give positive reinforcement. So if Sam is struggling in my class, I am going to kill Sam with kindness. I am going to thank him for picking up his pencil. I'm going to say, I really liked how you did this. I love this. Maybe you could help me with this. I am going to try to wrap Sam in as much as possible so there isn't a want for the other behaviors. I'm not even at a point where I have a behavior chart. I am just positively reinforcing Sam for every positive decision that that student has in my classroom. I'm not even worried if it's a target behavior all the time. I'm just going to be positive, 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 and kill that student with kindness. It's so hard for a student to be disrespectful if you are constantly modeling kindness. And it can't be fake. So I'm going to warn you. Kids can read you up and down, so you need to completely change your mindset and say, I really care about Sam and I'm going to make this work. So I'm going to try to get Sam to do whatever he can do in this class, or she can do, I don't know what gender I'm at this point, to try to be successful and completely make that your life goal, and you will see that behavior change. So if I'm going to actually reinforce, so let's say I've decided Sam is initiating. Let's go with initiating, right? So every single time I give a demand, I'm going to go over and I'm going to write the demand on a sticky note, right? Because I want to give the skill and make sure that Sam knows exactly what he or she needs to be doing. I'm going to put it on a sticky note and I'm going to say, all right, Sam, here's what we're going to do. Can you tell me what we need to do? And if he tells me, great, that's so perfect. Oh my goodness, it's awesome. That's amazing. So I'm going to be back in a few minutes and I want to see you get started because I know you can do it. We've worked on this before. Be super positive, right? Come back. Sam did it. That's amazing, Sam. Let's look at the next step. So I'm also going to reinforce. I may decide I want to actually reinforce with a reinforcer. So I may want to look at a point sheet, right? And it may just be class every 10 minutes, right? Did Sam initiate within those 10 minutes? So I'm gonna say, Sam, you did a nice job initiating the task. Here are your points. I may not want to. That would be a very scheduled reinforcement, right? So I'm looking at 10-minute increments. I may want to. By my verbal language, I'm actually positively reinforcing, but doing it on an intermittent schedule, so it's not predictable, right? If I am deciding to, I may want to give an extra point. I can do that as a teacher on a point sheet and say, you know what, you just initiated 2 tasks in 10 minutes. I did not expect that. Nice job. I can make those choices as a teacher. It doesn't matter as long as I'm reinforcing that behavior positively and I'm not reinforcing the behavior negatively, meaning I'm not getting angry. I'm saying, oh, why didn't you do this? You have a lunch tension. Those are all the things that are going to not shape that behavior. We have to be careful, though, not to give up. So, Sam's going to test me. I'm going to reinforce positively. I'm going to say, nice job, blah, blah. Sam still may not do exactly what I want him to do in class, but I need to continue at that because there will be an extinction burst, which means the behavior is going to get worse before it gets better, right? Because Sam is so used to this, he's not going to know what to do. He's going to keep trying harder to make me change my behavior, right? So I may need to work on through his extinction burst. So many times our BCBA gives our teachers plans like, this isn't working, right? Because they're testing you. They're going to see if you can get through this extinction burst. So we have to give plans time, and we have to give our efforts time before we give up. So the next thing I'm going to talk about in the next video is talking about how we can, one of the questions that came up a lot was, how can we use PBIS in our classroom or something similar if that's not a school-wide initiative? So we will get back to that piece because I know that was definitely a question. So again, just to refresh, we need to decide what's the target behavior. So what's the target behavior and what's the function of the behavior? So, for example, refusal to do the task, right? We'll go back to something like that. So the student's refusing to do the task, right? So the refusal is the target behavior. My function of the behavior is that they're trying to escape from the difficult task. So I now need to give them a replacement behavior, right? So I'm going to positively reinforce them, but I also need to give them what can they do besides a negative behavior, besides that refusal, whether it's head down, whether it's outward, whatever the refusal looks like for that student, what's the replacement behavior, right? So I need to start teaching that replacement behavior. So again, can the student demand for a break? So we use manding a lot with behavior, essentially asking. Can the student ask for a break? Is that something we can start teaching them? Do they need a break card? Do they, again, we talked about chunking, we talked about scaffold, we talked about checklists, we talked about breaking things down. Can the student do one thing versus 5 things? So we have to think about what is the replacement behavior? How are we going to teach them to manage themselves when they actually want to escape? So that's why something like a break card or a question card, or even saying, coming over to Sam and saying, it looks like you're not able to do your work right now. What can I help you with? If I was you, I might be stuck on this, right? I want to start to even give them language to use to express what they need. So they may have a student who's not even able to ask for a break because they've just completely shut down emotionally. So we need to start to help them use that language. We may say, you know what? It looks like you need a break. Why don't you go take a walk for a minute and then come back, right? So we may need to encourage those behaviors as well. So we need to look at what is the replacement behavior and what's that skill we're going to start teaching the student once we've decided on the target and the function. We talked about extinction and, if we decide to put an actual reinforcer, so I talked a lot about verbal reinforcement, just positive praise, and those types of things. But if I decide to work through a point sheet or a token system or something with that student, what I have to be cautious of is so let's go back to my homework example. So I've seen teachers say, okay, so right now Sam is doing 0 to 5 assignments. I want Sam to do 3 out of 5. If Sam does 3 out of 5 assignments, then he will get an extra large cookie at the end of the week. Sam does 1 assignment, Sam does 2, Sam does 1, week after week, right? Nothing is changing because Sam has never come in contact with the reinforcer. So that's also why it's important that we take our baseline data. Because if Sam is doing 0 homework assignments a week, and let's say there's 5, I should probably start with Sam coming in contact with 1, right? 1 is my goal. Sam, I want you to do 1 this week. That's our goal. If you do 1 assignment, you'll get the reinforcer, right? So we have to think about, if Sam never touches the reinforcer, it doesn't matter. The behavior is not going to change because he never got a taste of what he may get when he's successful. And we can talk to Sam. This week it's going to be 1. We're going to work up to higher, but let's start at 1. We can have those logical conversations. It doesn't have to be a secret. So too many times our teachers set the bar too high. I want 80% of the time. Well, they're at 10% right now. So let's look at what is a smart increment to be working at. So remember, we talked about having to pull back to get some traction to move forward. Same kind of situation. All right, we're going to talk more about our positive reinforcements through PBIS type behaviors in our systems in our classroom, as well as some of that modeling. So we're going to stop there for now, and we'll start again in a little bit.